All right, let's dive into something that powers every single living thing on this planet. We're talking about the flow of energy, how it moves through ecosystems, connecting everything from a blade of grass to a top predator.
So, to get us started, here's a weird one for you. What could a lion and a mushroom possibly have in common? I mean, really think about it. One's this majestic hunter, the other's, a fungus. They couldn't be more different, right? Well, there you have it. They're both consumers. Neither one can just whip up its own food. A lion has to go out and hunt a zebra, and a mushroom has to break down, say, a dead log. But the bottom line is the same. They get their energy by eating something else. And this isn't just a cool piece of trivia. This idea of how energy moves from one organism to another, that's the absolute bedrock of ecology. If you get this, you get the fundamental blueprint for how every ecosystem on Earth actually works. Okay, so to really track this energy flow, we've got to sort everyone into their roles. And it all boils down to one super simple question. Do you make your own food, or do you have to go out and find it? So basically, you can split almost all of life into two big teams. Over on one side, you've got your producers, or autotrophs. These are the self-starters. Think plants, algae. They just soak up sunlight and make their own energy. Easy enough. Then on the other side, you have the consumers, the heterotrophs. And yeah, that's us. That's lions, that's mushrooms. We're all on the team that has to eat other things to get by. Now, the consumer team has a few different specialties, right? You've got herbivores, who stick to plants. Carnivores, who are all about the meat. Then you have omnivores, who kind of eat a bit of everything. That's many of us. And you cannot forget the all-important cleanup crew, the decomposers. They're the ones breaking down all the dead stuff and recycling those nutrients right back into the system. Absolutely crucial. So we've got our players. Now let's see how they line up. The simplest, most straightforward way to look at this is with something we all learned about in school, a food chain. A food chain is basically our first, most basic map for where the energy goes. Just think of it like a straight line, a simple, one-way street showing who eats who next. So here's a classic example. You start with the sun's energy, which gets captured by the grass. That's our producer. Then, a grasshopper comes along and eats the grass. That's our primary consumer. And finally, a bird swoops in and eats the grasshopper, making it the secondary consumer. See? A super simple, direct transfer of energy, step by step. And each of those steps, the producer, the primary consumer, the secondary consumer, has a fancy scientific name. It's called a trophic level. It's just a way of talking about where an organism fits in the pecking order, what its feeding level is. But you've probably already figured this out. Nature is almost never that neat and tidy. In the real world, those simple, straight lines get tangled up into something way more complicated. And that's where we get the food web. This model is so much more realistic because it shows how all those different food chains in an ecosystem are actually overlapping and woven together. Because, let's be real, that bird from our simple chain, it doesn't only eat grasshoppers. It probably eats worms and berries too. And that grasshopper might get eaten by a frog instead of a bird. Suddenly, you've got this messy, complicated, but beautiful and resilient web of life. Okay, so we know who eats whom. But here's the next big question, and the answer is kind of shocking. How much of the energy from one level actually makes it to the next? Because it's not what you think, and it completely changes the way you look at an ecosystem. Just think about it. All that energy packed into the grass. When a grasshopper eats it, does it get all of it? 100%? 50%? Take a guess. Yeah, it's just 10%. That's it. A tiny fraction. Only about 10% of the energy from one level actually gets stored in the bodies of the next level up. And we call this the pyramid of energy. So wait, where does the other 90% go? Well, it doesn't just disappear. The organism uses it for, living. Moving around, growing, keeping warm. Most of it just gets burned off as heat. And this huge energy loss at every single step is exactly why ecosystems are shaped like a pyramid. And this leads to a really powerful insight from our source material. Because you lose so much energy at each step, you need a massive base of producers, a ton of plants, just to support a few predators at the very top. This is what makes eating high up on the food chain, eating meat, a real energy luxury. Now, here's another layer of complexity. It turns out that within these incredible webs, not all species are created equal. Some play a much bigger role than others. I just love this phrasing, animal influencers.
It's honestly the perfect way to think about a keystone species. These are the creatures that have this huge, outsized effect on their entire environment, way more than you'd expect based on their size or numbers.
So the official definition is that a keystone species is one that basically holds the whole system together. Think about the keystone in a stone archway. You pull that one stone out, and the whole arch just crumbles. It's the exact same idea in an ecosystem. You remove that one keystone species, and you can set off this devastating chain reaction.
So let's just pull this all together for a second. We started with a simple food chain, saw how it explodes into a complex web, understood how the laws of physics shape it into a pyramid of energy, and then saw how a single keystone species can hold the whole thing up. The big takeaway here: everything is connected.
And that really leaves us with a final, pretty heavy question to chew on. If the delicate balance of an entire ecosystem can be completely upended by removing just one species, what does that say about the impact of our species, which is changing entire ecosystems all over the globe? It's a huge question, and one that this science really challenges all of us to think about.